The next story comes from Sports Business Journal's John Ourand, and every year he does his annual predictions for the year. So, I mean, and John Ourand is one of the top sports business reporters out there. So I think whenever these predictions come out, these are believed to be very informed informed rather than this guy just guessing out there. But specific to WWE, his prediction is that WWE goes all in with NBC Universal. He says the WWE's TV deals expire at the end of 2024, but it will start to negotiate new deals in April, right around when WrestleMania is in LA. By the end of the year, the group will have a deal in place with NBCU that keeps Raw and NXT on USA and moves SmackDown from Fox to one of NBC's channels. The real significance of this deal comes in 2 years when the two negotiate their Peacock deal. The deals for Raw and SmackDown will lay the groundwork for NBCU to buy WWE outright. Bold predictions from John Ourand. He would be welcome to submit this at memo.fm/postwrestling, but just make sure you include your name and your company that you work for. Wai, likely or unlikely? Let's start with SmackDown being gobbled up by NBC Universal and placed, whether it be on USA, even the potential that it could end up on NBC.
I think we have to ask, whether or not this deal has been good for Fox. At the price that Fox is paying, at the ratings that they have garnered thus far with Fox or with SmackDown, would you say that it has been a deal that has been worthwhile and one that they'd be willing to, re-up or more likely pay more for?
I feel that it's a deal that I could not imagine Fox going much higher than what they're currently paying for it. When you look at like the number getting thrown around when the deal began was the hope of a 1.0 in 18 to 49. They're never hitting 1.0. I think they hit it maybe twice right at the beginning. They've settled in. It's a good number. They're typically number one on Friday nights. It props them up. The argument is that this is, $205 million average annual value for this contract. It's sizable in the wrestling space, but it's not a crazy figure when you're looking at 52 weeks a year. But it's also, and it's on a night when what would be replacing SmackDown if you're Fox? What would we be investing to cover 2 hours on Friday nights in its place? I don't think like this is a deal whereas Raw to USA, it would be catastrophic if USA lost Raw. Like they are struggling and Raw significantly lifts them up. Fox, they could lose SmackDown and I don't think it's going to be a big problem for them. And I also don't see them going crazy to like if WWE comes in and they want $350 million for this. I don't know if Fox is going to be necessarily committing to a gigantic increase. And that makes you all the more valuable if an NBC Universal is interested with the long-term goal that even if we overpay for SmackDown, this is all getting our ducks in a row for a massive purchase down the road when we can take all of this and not do this game every 5 years of increasing the rights fees. The big issue that would come with that is if you have a scenario where Vince McMahon wants to be back in this company. I mean, he ultimately has to give the green light to a sale. And that one paragraph last week from the Wall Street Journal, that's going to come up in all of these negotiations. Like, I think that makes Nick Khan's negotiations a little trickier when you're going to have people say, what's the deal with Vince McMahon? And Nick Khan can state, listen, there's no smoke to that fire, but are you going to believe that when this guy has the most voting power? And if you're NBC Universal and you want to buy this thing, you know that Vince McMahon has to be on board with this. Like that, that does create the first time that we have a public perception of a power struggle in the sense of Vince wants back in and he's not back in. Why is he not back in? Who is withholding him from being back in? And that's, you can give the obvious answers as to why he should not be in. I think it would be catastrophic if he was back in any kind of meaningful role. But if he wants to be back there, this is somebody that, he still does wield power in this company, quite a bit of it.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. And I mean, maybe, the threat of him being the big obstacle to prevent, what could be a major deal with one of these broadcasters. I mean, that's a real point of leverage that Vince still very much has. So, as for likely or unlikely in the new year, for this to happen, I think it's very likely that SmackDown moves off of Fox. and into the NBC portfolio. Um, a purchase outright.
Imagine they put it on NBC on Friday nights and gives Dwayne Johnson the boot with Young Rock.
Well, they'd probably do a lot better than that. But I think a more interesting question is, okay, let's say Fox doesn't have WWE on Fridays. Do they look towards any other professional wrestling?
Well, and that being AEW,
Mhm.
it's a huge question. It's hard to imagine AEW being on Fox, but it's if you were to break down the economics of it, I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense for them of the idea we know, like we've seen enough examples of when SmackDown goes to cable on FS1, and granted it's one-offs here and there throughout the year, but it's a drastic drop that they get. I don't think this would be a case where you would be able to build that audience up to 2 million viewers if it was on USA every Friday night. So you have to look at the inverse of AEW going from, and we just went over the numbers the other night, from TBS on a Wednesday night with Dynamite in 73 point something million homes to Fox that is in 123 plus million homes, and what kind of audience they would bring on a consistent basis. And they are not holding out for $205 million. If they got half that, that is game-changing money for AEW. $100 million would be enormous for them. That's more than a 2x increase.
Certainly, yeah. You can even argue that, I mean, even at a number less than that, it's still very worthwhile for AEW at the point now, 3 years into their business, where really they're still trying to build name value, just to expose the product and the roster and everything about it to a mass audience. I mean, that would be a gold mine for them.
Yeah, it becomes a very interesting game as well of if you are WWE and the idea of leaving Fox, does that leave the door open for such a option to occur? Like if you were WWE and you really wanted to be detrimental to AEW, and Warner Brothers Discovery was in a better situation, which they are not. Are you not taking a meeting with David Zaslav or whoever is overseeing these negotiations of WWE having content on Warner Brothers Discovery when all of this is up?
Of course. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you have meetings with everybody. That's just the nature of business, right?
But I don't think they could command any kind of, I do not see WWE getting any kind of offer from Warner Brothers Discovery regardless. But it's like an interesting theory out there of, if you are looking to leave, to hurt AEW's power as much as possible, like these are all the different calculus methods you're plotting out if you are going into this.
For sure. But, regardless of like where WWE ends up, I mean, AEW is a thing now. They are a thing with a proven track record of ratings that, and they're very valuable to way more people now than, just NBC or just Warner Media and NBC. So I'm still very curious to see like who else they'll be talking to, who else will be in contention when AEW rights are up.
The last thing on this, if you were to look at a situation, and this doesn't have to be Fox, this has to just be, this could even be within Warner, if their next round of negotiations goes in such a way, and this would be very counter to where television is going, where it's always more and more content, but if there was a deal where they get 2 hours of Dynamite somewhere for a sizable amount, but Rampage is not part of this package, is there a reason for AEW to keep that show going to sell down the road? Or do you think that there's a benefit to 2 hours of solid programming every week, even though you have this bloated roster? As a consumer, would that be a benefit to AEW as opposed to this third hour that you are constantly trying to hook people into watching, and certainly would not, you could find it in, like, it could end up somewhere on a cable network somewhere, but that's certainly something that Rampage's fate will be part of this whole negotiation if it ends up on a streamer or if it's not even wanted by someone else.
I think you run into a very similar situation as you have, are seeing now with Ring of Honor. Where if no broadcaster wants it, or if no streaming platform necessarily wants it, at least for a price that Tony Khan wants to sell it for, well, maybe your own streaming platform is the destination. Maybe you make it part of a, repackaged Honor Club that makes that deal a bit more attractive for $9.99. I mean, so much of it, depends on the logistics of their taping as well. But certainly AEW Rampage you built a name for it right now. It might not be a name as strong as Dynamite, but nonetheless, it's a name people recognize. And if it's a part of a streaming package that you're trying to sell, there's value in it. I would at the very least probably get rid of a Dark and replace it with Rampage if it came to that.